All right, ready to dive into a new topic. Today, we're tackling time travel. We've got some excerpts from Wikipedia to guide us.
Oh, this is a fun one. Time travel always gets people thinking.
Right. So, we've got the theories, we've got these supposed sightings of time travelers throughout history.
And of course, we've got to look at time travel in fiction.
Exactly. I think we start with the basics. Could time travel even really be possible?
The million-dollar question. And it's
Mhm.
one that's got physicists scratching their heads even today.
Our Wikipedia excerpt on time travel actually says physicists are divided on this.
Yeah, and it all boils down to our understanding of the universe and the laws of physics as we know them. Now, Einstein's theory of general relativity, that's where things get interesting.
Break it down for me. What's general relativity got to do with time travel?
Well, in a nutshell, general relativity deals with gravity and how it affects the fabric of space-time.
Space-time, right. Not just space, but space and time.
Exactly. And what Einstein's theory suggests is that massive objects like planets or black holes can actually warp space-time.
Warp it. You mean like bend it.
Exactly. They bend it. And this bending, this warping, it affects not just how gravity works, but also how time itself flows.
Okay, so the more massive an object, the more it warps space-time around it.
You got it. Now here's where time travel comes in. Some physicists believe that if you could warp space-time enough, you might be able to create shortcuts or loops.
So you're talking about like bending time so much that you could actually travel to a different point in time.
That's the idea. It's like folding a piece of paper so that two distant points touch. You could travel between those points through a shortcut, a wormhole.
Wormholes, right? I've heard of those,
Mhm.
but they're theoretical, right? We haven't actually found one, have we?
Not yet. And there are still a lot of questions about whether they could even exist in reality. For example, to create and stabilize a wormhole, you'd need something called exotic matter.
Exotic matter, what's that? Sounds intense.
Basically, it's matter with negative energy density. And as far as we know, that's not something that exists naturally, at least not in the quantities we'd need.
So even if wormholes are possible, actually creating one seems like a long shot.
It would be a huge key undertaking, to say the least. But let's say, for argument's sake, that we could create a wormhole. We'd still have to deal with those pesky paradoxes.
Right, like the grandfather paradox we hear about all the time. Go back in time,
Yeah.
accidentally prevent your own birth, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And paradoxes like that have led some physicists to propose the chronology protection conjecture.
The what now?
Chronology protection conjecture. It's a mouthful, I know. But it essentially suggests that the universe might have built-in mechanisms to prevent time travel to the past, precisely because of these paradoxes.
So it's like the universe has a built-in safeguard to prevent us from messing things up too badly.
You could say that. Now, wormholes aren't the only game in town when it comes to theoretical time travel. There's also the concept of a Tipler cylinder.
A Tipler cylinder. Now that one's new to me.
Imagine this. An infinitely long, incredibly dense cylinder spinning at an insane speed.
Infinitely long. Okay, we're already in the realm of the theoretical here.
Right. But the idea is that this spinning cylinder would warp space-time around it so intensely that it would create a path, a loop, that could lead back in time.
Hold on. So you're saying that a civilization advanced enough to build a giant spinning cylinder could potentially use it to travel through time?
That's the theory. Of course, building such a thing is, well, it's beyond our current capabilities, to say the least.
Yeah, I'd say so. So we've got wormholes, which are tricky, and Tipler cylinders, which are, well, let's just say ambitious. Are there any other possibilities out there in the realm of physics?
You know, we've only just scratched the surface of general relativity, and then there's the whole world of quantum physics, which gets even weirder.
Quantum physics, that's a whole other can of worms, or should I say wormholes.
Right. But to really understand the nature of time, we have to consider all the possibilities, even the ones that seem completely out there.
Okay, so quantum physics, what's that got to do with time travel?
Well, in the quantum realm, things don't quite follow the same rules as they do in the macroscopic world. We're talking about things like quantum entanglement, where two particles are linked no matter how far apart they are.
Quantum entanglement. I've heard that term before, but it's always seemed a bit mysterious.
It's definitely one of the stranger aspects of quantum mechanics. But basically, it means that these two entangled particles, they're connected in a way that transcends space and time. You measure the state of one, and you instantaneously know the state of the other, even if they're light years apart.
That's wild. So how does this tie into time travel?
Well, while quantum entanglement might not allow us to hop into a time machine, it does challenge our traditional notions of cause and effect. It suggests that there might be deeper connections between events that we don't fully understand.
So even if we can't change the past, quantum entanglement suggests that our actions could have implications that ripple through time in ways we can't even fathom.
Exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking about time and our place in the universe.
It's enough to make your head spin. But for now, maybe we should step away from the theoretical and dive into something a little more, shall we say, grounded.
Sounds like a plan. Where to next?
All right, so we've talked about the theories, mind-blowing physics of how time travel might be possible. But what about those supposed sightings of time travelers throughout history?
Right. This is where it gets fun. Our Wikipedia excerpt on time travel claims and urban legends has got some real head scratchers.
It does. And, even though most of these are probably just misinterpretations or, let's be honest, outright hoaxes.
Probably. But there's still that part of you that wants to believe, right?
Exactly. Okay, so let's dive into one of these alleged sightings. I'm thinking we start with Chaplin's time traveler. That one always gets me.
Ah, yes. The mysterious woman in the Charlie Chaplin film.
Right. For those who haven't heard this one, we're talking about a piece of footage from the 1928 premiere of Charlie Chaplin's film, The Circus.
And in the background, amidst the crowd, there's this woman, and she seems to be holding something up to her ear.
And it looks like, well, some people say it looks like a mobile phone.
A mobile phone in 1928. That's the claim to fame for this one.
I mean, come on, a mobile phone back then, it seems a bit far-fetched, even for me.
Right. In the image, it's grainy. It's a bit hard to tell what she's actually holding. A lot of people say it's more likely she was holding a hearing aid.
Which, to be fair, were around back then, though they didn't look anything like they do today.
Exactly. But even with the logical explanation, the story persists. People love a good mystery. And the idea of a time traveler caught on film, well, it captures the imagination.
It really does make you wonder, though, why people are so drawn to these stories, even when there's a perfectly reasonable explanation.
I think it speaks to our fascination with the unknown, that desire to think that maybe, just maybe, there's more to history than we know.
It's like those optical illusions.
Yeah.
Our brains trying to make sense of something that seems out of place.
Exactly. And when it comes to time travel, our brains are already primed to see the impossible as, well, possible.
So what other time travel sightings have caught your eye?
There's one that always sticks with me, the story of Rudolph Fentz. Have you heard this one?
Rudolph Fentz, it rings a bell. Remind me.
So, the legend goes that back in the 1950s, this guy, Rudolph Fentz, he's walking in New York City, and he gets hit by a car.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the story gets even stranger, because when they find his belongings, they suggest that he's not from the 1950s, but from the 19th century.
Wait, what? Like his clothes, his ID, all from the 1800s?
That's the idea. And of course, this sparks all sorts of theories about him being a time traveler, lost and confused in the wrong century.
So what happened? Did they ever figure out if he really was from the past?
Well, like a lot of these time travel tales, this one has a bit of a letdown. Turns out, the story of Rudolph Fentz, it can be traced back to a science fiction short story.
Ah, so it's fiction, not fact.
Exactly. But it's interesting how these stories take on a life of their own, passed down and embellished over time.
It shows how powerful a good story can be, especially when it plays on our fascination with time travel and the mysteries of the universe.
Absolutely. And since we haven't quite cracked the code of real-life time travel, it's no surprise that we turn to fiction to explore its possibilities.
Which is the perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive today, time travel in fiction. From H.G. Wells' The Time Machine to countless movies and TV shows, time travel has been a staple of storytelling for over a century. Okay, so we've covered the theories, those tantalizing time traveler tales. But now let's journey into a world where time travel isn't just a theory, it's a plot device. Time travel in fiction. Our Wikipedia excerpt on this is a wild ride.
Oh, it really is. And it's fascinating how fiction grapples with those paradoxes we talked about earlier. Like, if you could change the past, wouldn't that create all sorts of contradictions?
Right. Makes your brain hurt just thinking about it. The classic grandfather paradox. Go back in time, accidentally prevent your own birth. Chaos. So how does fiction deal with this?
Well, there are a few different approaches. Some stories, they kind of take the stance that the past is fixed, like you can't change it no matter how hard you try.
So any attempt to change the past either fails miserably
Or backfires spectacularly, often with some seriously unintended consequences.
So much for fixing your past mistakes, right?
It's-
But then there's the other side of the coin, the idea of alternate timelines or parallel universes.
Ah, yes, this is where things get really juicy.
Right. It's like every time you make a decision, every path not taken, It creates a new timeline,
Hmm.
branching off into this multiverse of infinite possibilities.
Okay, so instead of one fixed timeline, there are countless versions of reality, all happening simultaneously.
That's the idea. It's mind-blowing, right? And some stories even explore the idea of these timelines interacting with each other.
Oh, now you're talking. Like, what if you could meet another version of yourself from a parallel universe?
Yeah,
Or what if timelines collided?
exactly. It opens up a Pandora's box of storytelling possibilities.
Yeah.
And then there's the butterfly effect. Right. That's a big one. The idea that even the smallest change in the past can have massive ripple effects on the future.
It's like that chaos theory thing, right? A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and it causes a tornado in Texas. But in this case, it's a time traveler stepping on a bug that leads to some world-altering event.
It really makes you think about the potential consequences of messing with time, even if your intentions are good.
It's a heavy responsibility, right? No wonder time travel stories are so captivating.
They really are. And, thinking about it, all these ideas, wormholes, alternate timelines, the butterfly effect, they all tap into something fundamental about how we humans perceive time and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. It's about our fascination with the past, our anxieties about the future, and that little part of us that wonders, what if?
What if we could go back and change things, right those wrongs, or maybe just relive those glory days?
Exactly. It's why we keep coming back to these stories, exploring these possibilities, even if time travel itself remains elusive.
It's been an amazing journey exploring time travel, from the mind-bending physics to the urban legends and the sheer creativity of science fiction.
It really shows you how much this one concept has captured our imaginations.
It makes you wonder, though, what really awaits us in the future, and maybe, just maybe, if someone somewhere has already cracked the code of time travel. Something to think about, right?
Definitely. And who knows, maybe one day we'll have the answers. Until then, we can always keep exploring these fascinating possibilities.